This is one of the talks with Peter Hesse, an entrepreneur from Düsseldorf in Germany. And he's a man of multi-talents. He was the head of his family company, which is producing colors for artists. So it's a very beautiful business he grew up in and he was working in. But his heart and soul of his life's work, so to say, is an NGO in Haiti, one of the poorest countries of the world. And he was there, or he implemented their education for young children, for children between 3 and 6 years. And he made an effort of teaching them in the method of Maria Montessori. And not only did his organization teach the children, but he also made sure that there are teachers who can work with these children and thus lay a foundation for a better future in Haiti. And which country in the world would need a better future but Haiti? So this is Peter Hesse, but he's of course coming from a company which produces colors for artists. He's also a man of the arts. He's a man of music. He came to Haiti and to the Caribbean to dance, to have a good time, to eat the lovely food you have here. So he's a man who likes life, loves the world, and has ideas for it.
Well, thank you very much, dear Irene. You who helped us a lot in our work in this endeavor to help children in Haiti, in this case. You were very helpful there by helping to translate in various situations. And I'm very grateful that you also, first of all, made this nice introduction to me here. And I'm glad that we have the time and possibility to address my English friends in America, in Britain, everywhere in the world, where they speak preferably English, which is quite frequent. And they wouldn't read a German book, I suppose. I'm sorry. I can only write a German book now. But would have liked to do this in English. But if this is really successful in Germany, this book, well, might as well try another small one in English. But I don't know whether I survive these times.
Anyway, the sort of principle of your ideas, or the kernel, the innermost secret, if you like, is your idea of diversity in unity. Peter, what exactly do you mean by that? And how did this idea come into your mind?
Yeah, it's a very good question. For me, one in diversity is the slogan. One day in diversity, it's very clear in English, is that beautiful one in the diversity. That was just a dream before. I was just thinking, well, that would be nice. Especially the oneness, what does that mean? What does it mean? So it wasn't clear to me at all. But diversity is obviously visible. For me, this became an obvious truth, my truth, in looking into the world in more detail, looking at what has been found in nature by a famous German researcher, Humboldt, and he has already found out, really, when people didn't talk about this way.
In the 19th century,
yes,
we have to
not
say.
so recent. Anyway, it's relatively recent in the growth of the whole humanity, but still. I mean, he found out already everything is linked together. And this everything, he found it out in nature. But I discovered the same in humans. I didn't discover it, but I discovered that this is also recognized by people like, for example, one British scientist, Rupert Sheldrake, whom I love a lot for his work and his personality also. And it's great what he wrote about that. His morphic fields are fantastic instrument to clarify our togetherness across everything, across all borders, across time and space. Is non-dual, really, fantastic. So it from both angles, from nature, from reality, via the humanity and the morphic fields and the morphic morphogenetic variety after generations, it's confirming the idea of one in diversity.
And that we all,
spiritually also.
As spiritually also, you say that we as human beings, we all have a connection with each other. You said a couple of times that it was through spiritual powers, let's say, that this idea, which also comes in words, but was implemented in you, by the Spirit, by the...
Well, that's delicate but difficult, because it is not really how my life started. When my life started, I was a rational business person. I was teaching management, marketing in the old traditional lovely way, and not just manipulating people as it is seen today, and creativity. These were my subjects. But that was technical, that was purely industrial. Mm-hmm. But then I discovered that there are other dimensions in life, and I had to really discover that many people live in terrible, bad situations which I couldn't accept. I had to do something about it, and that triggered a new...
And that was when you, to put it more down to what actually happened, when you came to the Caribbean, particularly to Haiti for the first time.
For the music.
Exactly. On the one hand, you discovered the music and the life there, and you were overwhelmed by what you saw and listened to. And then on the other hand, you saw that in that particular place, with all its beauty, there is on the other hand the terrible poverty. And
yes, it's really gruesome when you see this. And Haiti is only one example. Many places in the world are like that. That's obvious. But I mean, I didn't feel it as much as I felt it when I was there and witnessing it. Mm-hmm. And that created a new part of my life, really. And then I had to learn, because first of all, I thought I knew exactly what to do to help. Mm-hmm. That was
as a German businessman or a European businessman, let's say, you knew exactly what was right. And it wasn't, was it?
No, of course not. I had to learn. I realized I had to be, first of it, I had to be humble. I had to be humble, listen, learn to listen. That's something for a business person who is teaching others to be good managers or and be creative and so on. All of a sudden, first thing I have to learn, listen humbly. Listen humbly. That's not so self-understood. It's not so easy. Well, it was very useful, because then I quickly discovered that people are suffering a lot, but what they suffer most about it are their children. And to do something for their children was the always coming. It was one wish which was really omnipresent. It was there all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, what's wrong here with this, in this situation? And I found out that people, when something went wrong in this country, like in Haiti, a lot of storms and big earthquake and things always happen all the time. And people come there, the states and the organizations go there and repair schools. They repair schools, but they forget that the school needs teachers. And all of a sudden there were schools, you could take pictures of the schools, collect money for more schools. But what does happen with these schools without
That's
teachers?
something one doesn't understand. That even we in the Western world who are ready to donate money, we are kind of cheated, because of course we think when there is a photo of a school, there will be lessons the minute after the photo is taken. But you found out that no, there are not enough teachers.
Yeah.
So what did you do about it then?
Well, first I must say that it may be possible in some other kind of countries, but not in those poor developing countries where I traveled for the music in South Africa and Haiti. And what did I do? We tried. I was very, very, very lucky to found a specialized person. I was not a specialist for education of children, not at all. I had no idea. I had no children myself. I still have no children, except those who came out of what happened later. And what happened to me is I met a person, a beautiful woman who happened to be a Montessori teacher, trainer. And I told her about what I've seen in Haiti, what happened to me in Haiti, and she said, "Okay, I come along. I come with you, and let's see what happens." And we tested Montessori in a village in the northern part of Haiti, and it worked. And it was incredible to see how fast children learned with the Montessori.
And she knew the area, did she?
No, she's nicely dark. She's a mixture. She's a Creole woman.
Yeah, so she's not a German like you are.
No, she's not a German, but she is a civilized member of the human society from Trinidad, and they are mixed since many generations. They are wonderfully mixed.
She's from the Caribbean.
And she is partly dark, black, partly white, and she's just as it should be, a knowledgeable person with children and a loving person with children. And we decided together, well, let's try in Haiti, let's try. And we thought she gave me 2 years of her life to start Montessori training there. Out of those 2 years, 3 years ago, we had our 30th birthday of our successful program. What came out of it is a model of Montessori early childhood development in Haiti, in a poor, desperate country where people had no training of this kind before ever. And it's given proof that this is possible in simple situations, especially in these situations where there's no pre-learning, which you have to de-learn first. No, you can start from scratch. And learning something normally is costly in those countries. So to offer this with a minimal, we had to learn, a minimal contribution is necessary, otherwise they don't take it seriously. Minimal. But then people learn something. Young women there, mostly, we had a few men, but really, honestly, those who stayed were women. We trained about over 1,000 women in the meantime, in those last 35 years. Over 1,000.
And they start their own schools,
they have their own schools.
So that they make a living for themselves and can go on teaching these the children.
And they have social businesses. They don't make much of there. There's typical social businesses. They have their own little school, enough to get them through life, and with the help of some parents, because the parents realize how beautiful it is for their children if they learn something which they haven't had the chance to learn. But so this is the framework. The framework now allowed me to look at the world and to see what can I do in this world. In this world, well, there's a lot to be done.
Yes, well, everybody would agree to that. But somebody like you, who is as energetic and as creative, what would you, at the time, consider the most important things to happen? Of course, there are millions, but what are your priorities?
I just go to a few simple aspects of my global view of what has to be better. Well, first of all, all human beings have basic needs. Basic needs are sometimes water, clean air, basic food, the health care, a lot. Protection against violence, protection against rain and so on, and the bad weather and everything. So there's a multitude. And people have another need, always. They have a need for love, empathy, solidarity.
Okay.
Those are...
And they are ready to give that?
To their children, yes. And sometimes what breaks through there is sheer cruel situations. You have these also. People are dual. Of course we are all dual people. But this duality must not hide that basically, I believe, inside people have a loving heart, a loving insight, full of empathy, full of potential solidarity if they have a chance to use this. And this is sort of the background of what I'm working on now. I'm writing a book in German, as I said, and we need to change a lot of details wherever we stand, wherever we live. And in my case, it's Europe, but I look from Europe to this one world. And this one world is...
So are you more concerned or I know that you're concerned with the institutions, and above all, the institutions that embrace many countries like the EU or the United Nations.
Yeah.
Both of them, it might be a coincidence, but both of them work in a way that decisions have to be taken unanimously.
Yeah.
And that's something you oppose, I understand.
No, I don't oppose this idea, but this doesn't work in this situation.
Okay.
It doesn't work. For example, it works unanimously, it works if somebody can find compromises and so on. And you have to work in such a situation in any democracy. Only in a good democracy, it doesn't have to be unanimous. It can be a balanced kind of majority rule, which decides.
2/3.
But this is not the case in the United Nations, and it's not the case in Europe either. So in both cases, multitude of differences. In the United Nations, there are states who have, of course, different ideas. They cannot decide anything sensibly unanimously. So that it doesn't work. And
So do you think it paralyzes them?
Yes, it just doesn't get things done. And in Europe, it's the same thing. In Europe, there are 27 countries in Europe. And among those 27 countries, a few don't follow the lines which we consider in Europe to be unanimous. All our values, our European values are European traditional values. Not all values are eternal. Values can change, but there are some positive basic values like love and empathy and so on and solidarity, which must maintain. And one of those rules is that if people are even in worse situations in the world, must be received by us in Europe. And for this purpose, we need a unanimous decision among 27 European states. And it doesn't work. There are 2 or 3 states who just don't want this.
And so what do you suggest? You mean that Europe, especially the rich countries of Europe, have to give a new home, albeit perhaps temporarily, for refugees who come from the various countries in this world. So what do you think to resolve, I mean, to improve at least the situation for refugees? What do you suggest?
Well, first of all, I think that the voting in our Europe has to be changed from unanimously voting to balanced voting, like of a majority of, I don't know, that is up to them to regulate what is possible. But of course, it has to exclude, for the time being, those who don't follow the basic solidarity. And it cannot be okay that people from all the world crowd into Europe, and only one country, what used to be mine now up to now, who took the majority of those refugees. That's okay for a time, but not on the long run. There will be more refugees coming. When the climate change will be affecting many people in the world even more than they do now, they will come. And they will go somewhere, and they will go to some safer place. And for many, the safer place is Europe. So then we have to open up Europe to as many refugees as possible. And as long as this doesn't work with 27 states, we'll have to find decisions working with less than 27 states, exclude them for the time being who don't follow. And the same thing is true with the rule of law. Europe is based on the rule of law. That's very important. Without any legal structure, we cannot function. And if some countries, this happens in Europe, and it happens to be sometimes the same who don't want refugees. This is maybe coincidental, but anyway, we have to take a look at it separately. These countries who don't want their law to be overriding everything else, which is regulated, if they don't follow, then we'd have to go along with building Europe without all those, or not all those, without these few countries for the time being, and leave it open for the populations of these countries, and to give a clear signal to those countries that if they change their governments, and the governments are more willing then let them come back. We need a whole bundle of good feeling countries, but without any decent feeling for justice and for solidarity, it won't be any functioning, wonderful country which I like is Europe.
Peter, we jump into another field of your interest, and I know that you're interested in the way how religions work together and estimate each other and live together more intensely in the future than they do now. Where do you see a chance for that?
Well, I see a chance on the very, very long run, not in my life, but I have a hope. And this is a dream vision I have. It's not a real vision. A real vision is a vision if there's a concrete goal at the end of this vision. I mean, if I can realize something really. But unification, I mean, working together with all religions, it just doesn't work in short periods. It is a long-term process, if it works at all. And why should it work as an absolute mechanism or as an absolute thing? I believe every single I tried it in several steps. Okay, first thing to what you have to find out when you talk about a unified situation in religious peace is that every single religion, any kind of religion, is sacred for those who believe in this religion. Everyone, they're all good. They all have their next step. They all have their centers.
The churches or
any kind,
temples or whatever.
And the funny thing is, all of these places, there's a living spirit there. If you go there, even if you don't belong to any of those religions, you go there, you feel it.
Yeah.
It's a fact. Any sensitive being can feel it from any kind of religion. It's beyond the formal
belief of that particular religion.
There are more things like where we have everything in common, and it boils down to these 7 steps, boil down to finally, for example, almost all, I must say in this case, all the major religions anyway, they follow the golden rule. The golden rule is don't do to me what you don't do to others what you don't want them to do to you. And then they thought in a negative way. Don't inflict on anybody something you don't want to be inflicted on you. Okay, that's maybe better put. They all follow the same rule. But this same rule is essential for loving, peaceful togetherness between people. It's fantastic if people follow the golden rule together. Some people, when I'm very young, used to be a wilder man, yes, and I love loving. And I don't mean the big eternal love, I meant physical love also. But as long as I do not respect the other ones not liking me as their partner, it's okay. If there's a golden rule between people, I put it in a dramatic way, but that's the basic idea behind it. Everything is okay if it's okay for both. All right? That is okay for people. But for partners, in whatever relationship they are, men with women, which I prefer for myself, or maybe men with men or women with women, all this, it's the same rule. They have to respect the golden rule. Well, now, but why not respecting this in world business? In world business, the same thing is basically should be true. You cannot do to some poor countries what you don't want them to do to you. But in business, the golden rules are simply not respected. Amongst human beings, yes, mostly, otherwise it wouldn't work. Yeah. But amongst societies and nations, it's just not yet used. The first step would be to understand that this would be much, much better, to reach a more loving, unified one world. We need a loving, empathic and solidarity framework. And it's now what we have is a framework of making the maximum business.
What do you think, if we reach that point that you dream of for the religions to start with, and they they respect each other and let each other live as everybody and all the religions want to live. What would the world be like?
Oh, the world would be much, much nicer. I have almost a joke, but in my viewing in my book, those 7 steps, my final idea is, once they accept each other as all being good for their religious belief, people and so on. There's one stick, still another aspect we have to overcome. It's the pandemic, which we have now. The
that's
corona,
a different matter.
And if that is finished, we all can embrace each other. And that's an idea which is so loving. I love this idea that we should be able to physically and mentally embrace each other through all the religions, through all colors, of course. Because people
Why
have
do you
colors.
think, I mean, this is again a huge question, but we are talking about huge things. Why is it so bloody difficult? I mean, it sounds easy enough, but it's not.
Well, people have a tendency of loving what is like them. Maybe because they want to love themselves. I don't know whether it's this alone. But as soon as somebody is different color is the most relevant, most
obvious.
Yeah, and I was one of those. I happened to be born. It's just a fact by European parents. Okay, I was not born in Europe, but it was European parents. And they all happened to be white-skinned. But in my life, I have witnessed so many wonderful people of darker skin, of other kind of skin. So I learned automatically that those people are not only equally valuable, but they are even fantastic as human beings in every sense. So for me, there's no race and color differences anymore. And sometimes in my country, Germany, there used to be activities in the street against racism. This happened a few years ago already. And we installed in my company, something. If someone hurts someone on the basis of his other color, I was asking the employees' associations to come to me and complain about that. And it happens once. We had an African, very gentle African who worked in our factory, and someone wanted his post and blamed him and was unfriendly to him because the other one was a black man, African. And they came to me, and we had the press there, we had people there, and everybody acclaimed what we did there. And well, of course, this white guy who had tried to get rid of this competitor with the black skin, he was kicked out immediately. Everybody was in agreement. So we have to be strict on that. Racism is something which is stupid anyway, but as long as it's there, we have to combat it.
But then that's the point. I mean, we can't get around, we can't get through life without having to fight one thing or another.
Why not love everybody in the same way? Like, wait a moment, it doesn't mean that everybody who is different has to be loved. No. People are different in its edge, in the respective groups. There are wonderful people in every race. In every race.
And that here we come to your point of the one in diversity. I mean, if we come closer to this idea that we are all belonging to one entity.
This is the key thing.
Be it seen as in nature, where you can see and touch the differences, or is it a mental unity, a spiritual unity, where we all have and each of us has his or her place? Yeah,
I find that there's one basic spirit, which is unanimous to all religions, to all people. It's the same spirit which is in every material thing, everything. This is this one entity, is this one mysterious, what is it, force? There's no name for it. In Asia they have this, it's called a Tao, they have no name for it. It's so holy, but it's there, it's a reality. And this is in everything. And I believe one day this will be accepted by everybody. and it will take long time. And that is my long-term belief and hope. Long-term. But at the moment, we have a lot of detailed repair needs in our mutual societies. We cannot always only look at ourselves. We have to look over our borders, not only physical borders, country borders. We have to look at our mental borders also. We are one in diversity. This is my key message in my German book. And this must, how do you say this in English? This attitude must
needs to
win.
be implemented.
I hope so.
Thank you,
And
Peter.
that's my big hope.
Thank you. Peter Hesse from Düsseldorf in Germany is an entrepreneur and he's a philanthropist in Haiti. He runs an NGO in favor of children and teachers, and he is in Düsseldorf. We are very glad that we can talk to him here, but maybe you have fun listening to him and making some of his ideas yours. Thank you.
Greetings to all my non-German speaking or English speaking friends. Bye bye.